Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, DwyerVIP.com for premium picks on Roku, Dwyer Boxing. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. There's a big fight this weekend. It's between Richard Abril, who I believe the world knows, everyone except the three judges scoring the fight, beat Brandon Rios by a few rounds, right? And he's taking on Sharif Bogere. Now, Bogere is a plus 275 underdog in many shops. Now, I understand that taking underdogs is fraught with peril. This is a high-risk play. Only do it if you have a very high risk tolerance. But I like the underdog, Sharif Bogere, in this fight based on styles and talents. Okay, let's talk about it. Richard Abril comes in at a side profile, right? In my opinion, the style he uses is, we'll call it, an Emanuel Stewart style. Now, just a disclaimer here, I'm going to critique some of the biggest names in boxing. But understand, no one should take it personally, right? In my opinion, boxing is rock, paper, scissors. And again, this is one man's opinion. Boxing's rock, paper, scissors. So as esteemed as some practitioners of one style are, I believe the reason why we continue to have new champions and different styles take over in different eras is because one style will lose to another style, right? You can be great in your discipline, but if you come up against a outside the box competitor with a style made to beat yours, you're going to be in trouble. Let me also make another point too. I don't believe there's much most boxers can do about it, right? Just like if I said to you, you have 3 months to learn to write left-handed well enough to be in a left-handed writing competition against lefties, right? No matter how diligent you are, no matter how astute you are, if you've been right-handed your entire career, you're just not going to be able to deal with competition against natural left-handers in a left-handed competition, right? I believe the same thing applies with boxing. You know, a guy like Richard Abril has a style that has worked for him against a lot of competition, including Brandon Rios, right? The problem is now he's facing a fighter whose style, in my opinion, is going to give his style problems. Since Richard Abril has spent his entire life developing his style, I don't believe he can change his balance, shorten his punches, change his strategy in one training camp to actually know how to cope with Sharif Bogere. Okay, let's talk about Emanuel Stewart. Let's talk about Abril's style. Now, this style is a style where a fighter comes in at a side angle and he's hitting you with a jab to keep you off. If you start to come inside, he has a left hook. If you get too far inside, he has a right hand. In fact, what Stewart used to tell his fighters was throw a 1-2. There are countless tapes of Stewart saying this to Vladimir Klitschko in the corner. If you blind the guy with a jab and come right back with the right hand, an opponent who is right here could be blinded by the jab and knocked out by the straight right hand, right? I want you to think of 3 Stewart fighters. All of them relied on jabs to create distance, right? All of them had great straight right hands among the best in boxing during their eras, and all of them would punish you with a left hook on occasion, right? Thomas the Hitman Hearns, Stewart's most famous fighter in the 1980s, right? Lennox Lewis, Vladimir Klitschko. That's the style of Richard Abril. Now that style has problems, right? It's not infallible. This is the real world. Perfection is more of a concept than a reality, right? The problem with that style is, first, the fighter has to have heavy punching power. In other words, if I'm fighting Thomas Hearns and he's throwing a jab and I start to disregard the jab, right? He has to be able to make me pay dearly with that straight right hand, right? The idea is to set up knockout punches. So, Thomas Hearns, lethal right hand. Lennox Lewis, lethal right hand. Just look at the rematch with Hasim Rahman, lethal. Vladimir Klitschko, lethal right hand. Just look at countless fights, including his last fight against Tony Thompson, right? These guys were heavy punchers. You need to be a heavy puncher for this style to work perfectly, right? One of the reasons is because, quite frankly, right, it's a shell, right? A jab, it's a shell with a threat of violence. If you look at Richard Abril's record, you're going to see that Abril, and I know he looked great against Miguel Costa, knocked him down several times, but Abril isn't the puncher that Hearns, Lewis, or Klitschko was. He's not the puncher, right? So the problem is an opponent has a bigger margin of error, right? Whereas with Thomas Hearns, as Roberto Duran found out, didn't allow you to make a mistake. If you made a mistake and you got hit with that right hand, you might never recover, right? Lennox Lewis, same thing. Vladimir Klitschko, same thing. With Richard Abril, I can get hit with that right hand, right? I can move around the ring, and if I'm hit with that right hand, and if I'm not knocked out, I'm still in the fight, right? Let me go further. The biggest problem, and it's what, in my opinion, is going to decide this fight, and understand, I'm here online supporting an almost 3-to-1 underdog. The biggest problem with the style is it limits your movement in the ring. In other words, because Emanuel Stewart fighters are trying to always maintain leverage to knock you out with either a left hook or a straight right hand, right? Sometimes a guy will throw a right uppercut, right? Understand the Ray Leonard style of fighting, the Muhammad Ali style of fighting, dare I say, we'll call it the Angelo Dundee style of fighting. Dundee was the trainer to both, right? Let's track the trainers. Where the person is moving, right? It's a mobile game. They're not standing there waiting to get hit with your jab and then trying to figure out how to duck your jab from arm's length while you're, coming across with the second part of a 1-2. The Ray Leonard school, where they're moving around the ring, throwing combinations, throwing their own jab off to the side of your jab. In my opinion, that style is made to beat the Emanuel Stewart style. Right? Stewart style, quite frankly, is really what Sonny Liston was doing against Ali, and we saw how badly that worked. Right? You can't be robotic. It's what George Monk Foreman's doing right now. Right? You can't be robotic, set up, load up on a right hand with sufficient leverage to get the right hand, and think that you're going to be able to stay set up against a mobile opponent, right? Because the mobile opponent is going to force you to reset. Let me mention an unpopular fight. I do think it's a revealing one. Vladimir Klitschko against David Haye. Understand, David Haye has much faster feet than Vladimir Klitschko. Haye can move around the ring, right? He's not, he's more of an ambush fighter, a newer style, right? But David Haye can move around the ring. And all I'm saying is, against a mobile opponent, Vladimir Klitschko was unable to impose himself on David Haye because Klitschko's game, and Klitschko's a great athlete, but understand, Klitschko, it's almost like he's wearing weights around his ankles, because the problem with a stance where I'm always trying to be in position at a side profile to hit you with the jab and then come with the right hand is that I can't just openly chase a guy around the ring because I can't get out of my construct, right? So David Haye, with a bad toe, went 12 rounds with Vladimir Klitschko, right? Here's what I expect to happen here. I expect Richard Abril to look like he's wearing ankle weights, right? I'm expecting Richard Abril to be forced to reset several times. He's not fighting Brandon Rios. He's fighting Sharif Bogere. Rios, straight ahead fighter. You knew where Rios was going to be. Rios is, as I like to say, right in front of you, right? He's trying to bore his head in on your chest and throw short punches. That's his game, right? So, Richard Abril looked great. He was able to just hit Rios with the jab. When Rios came in, Abril knows how to hold. Abril also knows how to lean his head away when you come inside. So if you're just trying to bore your, head, put your head on his chest, you have a hard time doing so because you can't find his chest, right? Abril keeps you on his shoulder. That's different than what's going to happen against Bogere, right? I believe the casinos have mispriced this because Abril looks so good against Acosta and Rios. Bogere's mobile. Bogere, like Ray Leonard, moves around the ring, right? Let me also point out, too, that punching power is a bit deceiving, right? Punching power isn't how wide the angle is on which you throw the punches and stuff. A lot of punching power is hidden, right? Punching power really comes from your legs, comes from your balance, comes from how hard you're able to throw the punch based on your leverage. Just like in baseball, where some guys have what looks like easy wind-ups, looks like they're not even trying, but then the ball explodes at 95 miles an hour. Think Mariano Rivera. So too it is in boxing. And I'm going to sound ridiculous, and I know the films look like Abril hits harder than Bogere, right? Because Abril throws long punches. He's tall, he's slender, he throws long punches. When we see him come over with that right hand on Miguel Acosta, it looks like he's packing big power. I'm just here to tell you, though, that when you're looking at fights and trying to figure out how hard a guy hits, don't look at the arc on the punch and all this other stuff. Look at the opponent. Look at how hurt he is after getting hit. In my opinion, between these two guys, the biggest puncher in this fight is Sharif Bogere. And his punch, it's a very short, straight right hand, right? It's a right cross, very short. That's a knockout punch. I believe Bogere has an outside shot at a knockout in this fight. I'm expecting the fight to go as follows. Abril, keep resetting his feet. He's in a construct. He'll look much slower in the ring. Bogere's going to have the foot speed advantage. The key in the fight is who jumps in better. I believe it's going to be Bogere, right? Bogere is going to be outside. Bogere has a jab. I understand Bogere is shorter. I believe against these Lennox Lewis type fighters, sometimes being shorter helps you, right? We saw in 2 fights, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. Literally, the taller men being forced to, and I know this is controversial, illegally push the shorter men off of them, right? Because, of course, you know, the style is so rigid that if a short guy ducks the jab and gets close to you, too close for you to throw that straight right hand, what else are you going to do? I think Bogere is going to be able to get inside on Richard Abril. He'll be outside. He's an advanced fighter. He'll jump in. He'll get inside. Then I believe he's going to hurt Abril. Right? Too much hand speed. Too much power. Bogere likes to touch you with his left. He has his own one too. He likes to touch you with his left and then come back with a very hard right hand. In boxing, no one's perfect. I don't believe either of these guys are perfect. Right? But I do believe that it's a mistake to think that Bogere is going to fight the fight that Brandon Rios did. I think his foot speed is the difference in this fight, coupled with his shorter punching and what I believe is his bigger punching power. Right? I like Bogere in this one. Understand the risk involved. Right? As we do here online more times than I want to. We're once again swimming upstream against public opinion. Right? The public believes that if these guys fought 3.75 times, that Abril would win 2.75 times and Bogere would only win once. What I'm here telling you is Abril is going to have a problem with a mobile opponent. And I believe that's going to cause all kinds of problems for it. Put a different way, for the hardcore boxing fans, think about the Ray Leonard Hearns fight, classic, from the early 1980s. That's as good as it gets in this sport, right? The way I interpret that fight is they come out, Thomas Hearns is in an Emanuel Stewart stance, fighting in Emanuel Stewart style, right? And he's having all kinds of problems with Ray Leonard. Ray's too mobile, right? Hearns is having a problem. There's a moment in the middle of that fight where Ray Leonard gets inside, hits Hearns to the body. Hearns is in trouble. Now it's a tribute to the Hitman. That Hitman then gets on his horse. Could you imagine seeing Lennox Lewis or Vladimir Klitschko doing this? Hitman changes his style in the middle of the fight and starts dancing behind a jab. He literally starts out Ray Leonarding Ray Leonard. So then, in what can only be described as a great fight between two Hall of Famers, Ray Leonard then starts hunting down Thomas Hearns. And this is the fight where Ray Leonard starts waving his hand, right? He literally showing Hearns the right hand. He's waving his hands and he's walking up to Thomas Hearns, throwing combinations, right? The point is simply this. In the early part of that Ray Leonard-Thomas Hearns fight, Ray's too mobile for Thomas Hearns, right? Hearns has to abandon his construct, right? The side profile behind a left jab with the right hand cocked. Think Canelo today, right? He has to literally abandon that to get back in the fight, right? And then, of course, Different style. He's dancing around, shooting a jab. I don't believe Richard Abril will be able to do that. Right? I think what Richard Abril is going to find is that Bogere, who is unbeaten, is simply too mobile for him. Keep in mind, too, that Bogere hits hard. Right? Bogere, quite frankly, is exactly, and I'm going to get in trouble here, but I'll just throw it out there. Bogere is exactly the kind of fighter who would, dare I say it, give Adrian Broner a hard time. Right? This is a must-watch fight. I like the underdog here. The post-fight video, I'll either be wiping the egg off my face, eating crow, or I'll be in the penthouse sipping champagne after having been in line collecting on this one. I like Bogere, the plus 275 underdog. Leave your comments for me here. Tell us your take. And thanks for stopping by. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com and, of course, DwyerVIP.com. Thanks.